The sleeping giant's Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she examined the strange metallic surface her team had uncovered. The mining colony on Kepler 442b was supposed to be routine work, extracting rare minerals for the Galactic Trade Union. Nobody expected to find ruins buried 3 miles beneath the surface. The metal gleamed with an impossible shine, unmarked by the millions of years it had spent underground. Elena ran her scanner across the surface, frowning at the readings. The composition showed elements that shouldn't exist together, arranged in patterns that made her equipment give error messages. "Professor, you need to see this," called Marcus Chen, her graduate student. His voice carried an edge of excitement mixed with fear. Elena climbed down into the excavation pit where Marcus stood before a massive wall covered in symbols. The symbols were beautiful and terrifying. They seemed to shift and dance when she looked at them directly, forming patterns that hurt her mind to process. But something about them felt familiar, like a half-remembered song from childhood. "Run a linguistic analysis," Elena ordered, though she suspected their computers wouldn't be able to decode whatever language this was. As Marcus worked, she pressed her palm against the cool metal surface. The moment her skin made contact, the world exploded into light and memory. Elena found herself standing on the bridge of a ship that could swallow entire moons. Around her, beings that looked almost human operated controls that defied physics. She watched as weapons fired that didn't just destroy planets, they unraveled the very fabric of space-time, creating wounds in reality that took centuries to heal. "The Builders return," whispered a voice in her mind. "The sleeping giants wake." Elena jerked her hand back, gasping. The visions faded, but the knowledge remained. These weren't alien ruins, they were human. More than human. They were what humanity had been before they forgot who they were. "Professor, are you all right?" Marcus asked, steadying her as she swayed on her feet. "Send an emergency transmission to Earth," Elena said, her voice shaking. "Tell them we've found evidence of pre-human civilization. And Marcus, use the highest encryption we have." What Elena didn't know was that their discovery had already been detected. Far above Kepler 442b, hidden beyond the edge of the system, ships of the Zephyrian Confederacy monitored all human activities. The Confederacy ruled this sector of the galaxy with careful precision, managing dozens of species like pieces on a vast chessboard. Admiral Kethvar studied the intercepted transmissions from the mining colony with growing alarm. His scaled hands moved across holographic displays, calling up ancient records that most of his species had forgotten. The files were marked with symbols that meant extinction-level threat in 17 different languages. "Sir," his aide whispered, "if these readings are accurate, the humans have found a builder site." Kethavar's 4 eyes narrowed. The builders were legend, stories told to frighten young Zephyrians into obedience. Ancient beings who had shaped the galaxy before vanishing without trace. They had created wonders and horrors in equal measure, weapons that could snuff out stars and technologies that bent reality itself. But the legends said something else too. They said the builders hadn't vanished. They had been forced to forget, their memories locked away, their descendants scattered across the galaxy as primitive species who would never remember their true heritage. "Prepare the fleet," Kethvar ordered. "If the humans are truly the children of the builders, we cannot allow them to remember what they once were." Back on Kepler 442b, Elena worked feverishly to understand what they had discovered. Each piece of technology they uncovered seemed to respond to her touch, systems coming online after eons of dormancy. The walls now pulsed with soft light, and she could hear something like a heartbeat echoing through the buried complex. "The genetic locks are breaking," she murmured, though she didn't fully understand what that meant. The knowledge came from somewhere deeper than memory, written into her very DNA. Her team had grown from 12 to over 50 as word spread about the discovery. Scientists, engineers, and military personnel had arrived from Earth and the outer colonies. All of them reported the same thing. Touching the builder technology triggered strange visions and impossible knowledge. Dr. James Wright, the team's physicist, stared at equations that had appeared in his mind fully formed. These describe how to manipulate fundamental forces, he said in amazement. Not just gravity and electromagnetism, but forces we haven't even discovered yet. Lieutenant Sarah Connor, sent by Earth Defense Command to assess any military applications, found herself understanding weapon systems that could crack continents in half. Professor Vasquez, she said quietly, I think we need to evacuate the civilian personnel. What we're dealing with here, it's not safe. But Elena was deep in communion with the central control system. Her consciousness merged with technology that predated human civilization by millions of years. Through the Builder network, she could sense similar sights awakening across the galaxy. On Mars, beneath the polar ice caps, in the asteroid belt, hidden inside what everyone thought was just another mining station, deep in Earth's oceans, where the pressure had kept the secrets safe. Humanity wasn't from Earth. They were refugees, survivors of a species that had once ruled the stars. The genetic locks had been placed by their own kind, a desperate attempt to prevent the cycle of destruction that had nearly torn the galaxy apart. Elena, Marcus shouted, grabbing her shoulder. Ships are coming, lots of them. Elena opened her eyes to see dozens of warships dropping out of hyperspace around Kepler 442b. The Zephyrian fleet formed a perfect sphere around the planet, their weapons already charging. But Elena no longer felt afraid. The Builder systems were fully online now, and she remembered what her people were capable of. All human personnel, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Confederacy, came the transmission. You will cease all activities at the Builder site immediately. Any attempt to activate Builder technology will be met with planetary bombardment. Elena stood in the center of the control chamber, her hands moving across surfaces that had waited millennia for her touch. Around her, the buried complex hummed with power that could reshape solar systems. She thought about her daughter back, on Earth, about all the humans living ordinary lives, unaware of their true heritage. The choice was simple: submit to the Confederacy and allow humanity to remain ignorant slaves, or wake the sleeping giants and face the consequences. Elena pressed her palm against the central control pillar. Deep beneath the surface of Kepler 442b, systems that had slumbered for eons roared to life. The planet's core became a fusion reactor, feeding power to weapons that existed in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. Similar systems activated across the galaxy as the Builder network recognized the awakening command. In Earth's major cities, ordinary humans suddenly found themselves remembering things that had never happened to them. A bus driver in Tokyo began sketching blueprints for faster-than-light engines. A teacher in New York started speaking in mathematical equations that described how to fold space. A farmer in Kenya looked at his fields and saw star maps showing the location of every inhabitable world in the galaxy. The genetic locks were breaking everywhere, and humanity was remembering what it meant to be the children of gods. Above Kepler 442b, Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as energy readings spiked beyond his instrument's ability to measure. The planet's surface began to glow as massive weapon systems emerged from underground, structures the size of cities rising into the sky like mechanical mountains. Fire, he ordered. Destroy the planet before they can complete the activation sequence. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. Energy beams and projectile weapons streaked toward the planet's surface, only to impact against shields that hadn't been there moments before. The planetary defense grid absorbed the attack, converted the energy, and fed it back into the awakening weapons systems. Elena felt the attack through the Builder network. Each explosion like a gentle tap against her consciousness. The Zephyrians were powerful by the standards of their time, but they were trying to fight the gods with spears and stones. This is your final warning, she broadcast to the Confederacy fleet, her voice carrying harmonics that made reality itself vibrate. Leave this system immediately or face the consequences of awakening the Builders. The galaxy remembers Admiral Kethvar stared at the impossible scene unfolding before him. The human colony planet had transformed into something from the darkest myths of his people. Massive structures rose from the surface, their geometric forms defying conventional physics. Weapons that existed partially in normal space, and partially in dimensions his sensors couldn't even detect tracked his fleet with mechanical precision. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the Confederacy," his communications officer reported, fear evident in his voice. "Similar structures are appearing on dozens of worlds. Earth itself is changing." Through the tactical display, Kethvar watched as Earth's moon split open like a flower, revealing a weapons platform that dwarfed his entire fleet. Ancient stations hidden in asteroid fields powered up, their energy signatures blooming across, his screens like deadly stars. The humans weren't just activating one weapon. They were awakening an entire galactic defense network that had been sleeping for millions of years. On Earth, Dr. Miranda Foster was teaching her physics class when the awakening hit her like a thunderbolt. One moment she was explaining basic orbital mechanics. The next she was remembering how to build engines that could push matter past the speed of light by convincing the universe that distance was just a suggestion. Her students watched in amazement as their mild-mannered professor began writing equations on the blackboard that described technologies beyond their comprehension. But Miranda wasn't alone. Across the planet, humans were experiencing similar awakenings. In the slums of Mumbai, a street child named Raj suddenly understood how to manipulate quantum fields with his bare hands. In the corporate towers of New York, a janitor named Bill began sketching designs for computers that processed information using folded time. A retired grandmother in rural Kansas found herself speaking in the mathematical language that controlled fundamental forces. The genetic locks that had kept humanity dormant for millions of years were cracking open, and the descendants of the builders were remembering their birthright. Back on Kepler 442b, Elena stood at the center of a storm of information and power. Through the builder network, she could sense every human on every world, their awakening minds connecting to the vast web of knowledge that had been hidden in their DNA. She felt their fear, their wonder, and their growing understanding of what they truly were. But she also sensed something else. The other species of the galaxy were terrified. The Zephyrian Confederacy was just the beginning. Emergency sessions were being called on 100 worlds as governments realized that the primitive humans they had dismissed were actually the legendary builders, awakening from a sleep that had lasted geological ages. "Elena," came a voice through the communication system. It was Dr. Foster. Her consciousness somehow projected across the light years through technologies that made conventional physics seem quaint. "I can see it all now. Why we were made to forget. Why the locks were put in place." Elena nodded, the full scope of the tragedy becoming clear in her mind. The builders hadn't been conquered by their enemies. They had conquered themselves. Their power had grown beyond all restraint, and in their arrogance, they had begun to see other species as inconveniences to be removed. They had become gods, without wisdom, creating weapons that could unravel the fabric of reality itself. The final war had been fought not against aliens, but against their own kind. The surviving builders had used their last act of creation to lock away their memories, scatter their descendants across the galaxy as primitive beings who would hopefully learn wisdom before they remembered power. "But the locks are breaking. Now," Elena said. "The question is, what do we do with what we remember?" Admiral Kethvar made his decision. If the humans were truly awakening as the builders, then every other species in the galaxy was doomed unless they acted immediately. He opened communications to the Galactic Council, broadcasting on emergency frequencies that would reach every civilized world. "This is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Confederacy," he transmitted. "I am invoking Article 7 of the Galactic Survival Protocols. The builder species has awakened. I repeat, the builders have returned. All forces are to converge on Sol System immediately. This is an extinction-level event." Across the galaxy, ancient alliances activated. Species that had been enemies for centuries put aside their differences in the face of a threat that could end all life. The crystalline hegemony contributed, their reality-shaping technologies. The Void Swimmers brought weapons that existed outside normal space-time. The Quantum Collective offered computational power that could predict the actions of gods. Within hours, the largest fleet in galactic history was assembling around Earth. Ships from 1,000 worlds, technologies that represented the pinnacle of non-builder science, all focused on preventing humanity from fully awakening to its true nature. But Elena could see them coming through the builder network. Every ship, every weapon, every desperate plan to stop the awakening. And she faced the same choice that her ancestors had faced millions of years ago. Use the power of the builders to crush those who threatened them, or find another way. On Earth, the awakened humans were having the same realization. The janitor Bill looked at his sketches and saw how easily they could be turned into weapons. The grandmother in Kansas realized that her mathematical insights could be used to unravel the atomic bonds of entire star systems. Young Raj understood that his quantum manipulation abilities could tear holes in reality itself. They remembered the last time the builders had faced a choice like this. They remembered the wars that had set galaxies ablaze, the weapons that had wounded space and time itself, the civilizations that had been erased from existence so completely that even their memory was destroyed. "No," Elena said, her voice carrying across the builder network to every awakened human. "We won't make the same mistake twice." As the Galactic fleet approached Earth, ready to unleash destruction on a scale that would make supernovas seem like candles, Elena made a different choice. Instead of activating the builder weapons, she did something that no one expected. She opened communications to every ship in the attacking fleet and began to transmit the true history of the builders. Not the sanitized myths that most species told, but the complete record of what they had been and why they had chosen to forget. Admiral Kethavar watched the transmission in growing amazement as the story unfolded. The builders hadn't been mindless destroyers. They had started as explorers and creators building wonders across the galaxy, but power without wisdom had corrupted them, turning them into the very monsters they had originally sought to protect the galaxy from. The awakened humans could have activated weapons that would have turned the attacking fleet into cosmic dust before they could fire a single shot. Instead, they chose to remember not just their power, but their responsibility. "We remember what we were," Elena's voice echoed across 1,000 ships. "We remember the mistakes we made, and we choose to be better." One by one, the ships of the Galactic fleet powered down their weapons, not out of fear, but out of understanding. The humans had awakened as the builders, but they had also learned something their ancestors never had. True strength wasn't about having the power to destroy, but about having the wisdom to choose not to. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had remembered its true nature, but it had also chosen to use that knowledge to build rather than destroy. The sleeping giants had awakened not as conquerors but as guardians, and for the first time in millions of years the galaxy felt truly safe.